our panel discussion on unraveling the luxury vehicle market potential. And I'd like to invite Mr. Avik Chattopadhyay, co-founder Experial, who will be our moderator. Thank you, Avik, for being here today. I'd also like to invite our three guests on the panel discussion. Mr. Santosh Iyer, VP Sales and Marketing, Mercedes-Benz India. Welcome. Mr. Amit Garg, Director, Shiva Group. Welcome. And Mr. Utkarsh Singhania, Titania Autobike. Thank you. And Avik, you can start in just a short time.
Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Right, we can proceed.
Okay, Atul, Dipanshu, thanks a lot for giving us this opportunity, giving me the opportunity to actually chat with three really interesting people, okay, from the world of luxury automobiles, and spend some time on a very interesting subject, which is unraveling the luxury vehicle potential in India. And this, of course, is in the background of the fact that over these 2 days we are discussing the future retailer and the future retail and the future of retail in India. So thanks to Santosh, Amit, and Utkarsh for taking time out to be with us here today. Utkarsh, we can't see you. I'm sure everybody would like to have a look at you. So if you could switch your video on, it will be helpful. And also you're on mute. Okay, there you are. Okay, good to have all the three of you here. Right, I'm meeting Amit and Utkarsh for the first time. Santosh and I, we've been friends for quite some time now.
Yeah.
Thanks again, once again. So Amit and Utkarsh, why don't you just take a minute each to tell all of us as to what do you guys do. So most of us know you, but still. Amit, start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm into automobile dealership space. We are running dealerships for Bajaj Auto, two-wheeler as well as commercial. And then we were the dealers for General Motors, still running the workshop for General Motors, still, though General Motors is not in India no more. And then we are the dealers for Mahindra and Mahindra for passenger vehicles and light commercial vehicles. Then we are the dealer for Jaguar and Land Rover for Delhi NCR. So that's how we have around 24 outlets all across Delhi NCR for all these brands. We do operate brands like KTM and Husqvarna also.
Okay, excellent. Utkarsh, a bit about what.
So hi, hello. We are a automobile group based out of Ranchi. Yeah. So we are based out of Ranchi, Jharkhand, and we are dealers for, like, our family is dealers for 10 different OEMs, including in the luxury segment. We are dealers for BMW cars, BMW Motorrad, and we dealers for MG, Hyundai, JCB Machines, Mahindra Commercial, Honda two-wheelers, Bajaj two-wheelers, all these, Nissan. We are dealers for all these brands, and we are having around 40 outlets, 40 showrooms in all across Jharkhand and West Bengal.
Excellent. So today we shall focus our discussions on the luxury brands that all of you are involved with. Okay, and so right away, my first question to the three of you, how's the Josh?
Well, from a Mercedes-Benz India perspective, I think we are in a unique situation where the demand is more than supply for two reasons. Where, of course, we have the semiconductor topic in one sense, but many of the newly launched products, I think they do exceedingly well. Even end of last year, we saw the uptake. For the second wave of COVID, we saw around 45 days of closure, but then the demand is so strong right now, and we are almost back to 2018 levels, the peak levels, when you look at quarter by quarter. So on one side, you can be happy with it. On the other side, luxury car purchases, like even any car purchase, is for some occasion in the family, some birthday, anniversary, and when we are not able to deliver to that customer commitment, we also feel bad. So right now, on one side, we have a huge order backlog, but also to manage customer expectation. The good part is, because of this, a lot of media thinking about semiconductors, and I think many of them are aware, so they are patient enough with us. They are ready to wait. In fact, ready to wait even till Jan of next year, Feb of next year. This scenario could not have been thought, say, 2 years back, pre-COVID. So I think the Josh is very strong and very high as far as the current trends are concerned.
Well, good to know that, Santosh. This is possibly the right note to start with. Amit, how's the Josh at your end?
Absolutely, what he's saying is correct. We are, as dealership, I can tell you that we are sold out for next 2 to 3 months in Mahindra and Mahindra also, and in Jaguar and Land Rover also. And we are selling the same amount of vehicles, rather more than what we were selling before in Delhi NCR. And I'm sure that might be the trend in Pan India also. So the Josh is quite strong and quite exciting also. And one thing more I have seen now, the customer post COVID is upgraded to the higher ticket size. In Jaguar and Land Rover, we are selling more of before we were selling more of a ticket size of 50 to 60 lakhs, but now our numbers are same, but we are selling cars above 1 crore. All the cars, the ratio has changed from 70-30, from lower ticket size to higher ticket size, to 70 opposite. 70 is now higher ticket size than to lower ticket size. So it is as good. It's very good for profitability also, because higher the turnover, higher the profit margins. So the situation is really quite good and quite bullish.
Interesting. Utkarsh, how about in Jharkhand and West Bengal?
No, I would say that the situation is similar pan India, I must say. And what Mr. Amit is saying, that the ticket size has increased. This is something that we have been witnessing not just this time right now after the second wave of the COVID or due to semiconductor shortage, but we have been witnessing in our market this from the after the first wave of the COVID itself. And that is not just limited to four-wheeler cars or something. Even in bikes, we are witnessing that. Jharkhand, we are being a small market, it's not a very big market for 4 bikes of BMW Motorrad, like the range of except for 310R, it will primarily the dealership is for that range. But since last first COVID wave, we've been witnessing a very huge trend in the demand for the premium bikes as well. I mean, the mindset of the people has been that YOLO, you only live once, and whatever is there. So people are moving more towards go for it. Like, don't keep money toward with yourself and just go for it. Yeah, so that is a scenario that even we have been witnessing.
It's interesting. It's very, very interesting to hear this, because as you spoke, Utkarsh, about the YOLO principle, and now it obviously applies to all socioeconomic strata in society. So maybe the COVID has actually brought forth a harsh but the reality that the rich have got richer while the poor have got poorer. But what that actually implies is, and at least for the segment that all of you operate in, obviously the Josh is good, and you will be looking forward to the times to come. So the COVID experience, all of you have said that it's been positive. People are looking at higher ticket vehicles. Okay, even when it comes to two-wheelers like the sports specific level or the Motorrad, people are looking at higher ticket motorcycles also. Now, has the entire COVID experience always been positive this way, or have you felt certain negatives even when, not only with the market, but also when running your business, when trying to reach out to customers, when trying to ensure that the high levels of the high standards of service that everybody expects from brands like a Mercedes Benz, like a Jaguar, Land Rover, or a BMW, they're always met. So Amit, I'll start with you as to, what were the key learnings that you will take away, say, from the first 12 to 14 months of the COVID?
First of all, I would take COVID learnings as very, very positive, and it has given us a very positive effect for long term. Like it has given us time to introspect into ourselves, into our dealership operations, more focused, and to cut our extra cost, and the processes, to redefine the processes in a much more efficient way. So now our dealership is much more leaner, mean and lean, and much more efficient in terms of all the cost. And it is much more efficient in terms of processes and customer experience. So we have cut down our cost by almost 20-25% as before COVID, and we're selling the same number of cars. So cutting the cost by 20% and selling same number of cars is obviously, you can imagine, the COVID time and what we have introspected to our dealerships, to ourselves. So it is boon now because those days we were worried about what will happen in the future, and we were redefining everything, and we were cutting down our cost and everything. Now those cost cutting and everything is giving us a very, very positive result to our employees, to us, to customers also. Number one is this criteria. Then it has given us, previously we used to do marketing on a digital media. Yes, we do, because without that there is no way forward. But we are more focused on digital marketing and digital leads, and newer ideas for getting more inquiries through digital, and converting customers, focusing on more on test drives. What 100% test drive should 50% test drive, or 100% test drive should be given to the customers through the digital lead. So it is overall it is a very positive impact if I see as to my dealership when the COVID was there. Though we were afraid, we were cutting our cost, but we have cut our flab, we have cut our fat. We are more mean, we are more lean, we are more cost effective, we are more efficient, and we are more profitable now. And that's what I can say.
Okay, interesting. I'll come back to you on a couple of issues that you shared, that you raised with us. Utkarsh, how about you? What has been your experience?
Our experience has been that since these segments are seeing an uptrend when from customers' point, like we have been, just able to create more customers, and especially for our market where this segment is, kind of unexplored, I would say. Like we're creating a segment over here. So a lot of things are there that we have also learned from customer expectations point of view, wherein we have seen post-COVID, due to container shortage or whatever, a lot of parts like across OEMs, across multiple OEMs, there have been issues of and delays of parts, etc. And still you have to meet the expectations of the consumer that at a certain level, like fine, like how to tackle that. So that has been a great learning experience for us post-COVID this time. And apart from that, like we have really understood, like Mr. Amit said, that the importance of digital. Like earlier we would not focus much, like it was still the traditional way of going on BTLs and ATL activities. And now what we have seen is that we have almost diverted our entire marketing budget onto the social media and digital platforms, rather than going for the traditional newspaper ads or hoardings or etc. So that is one key takeaway that we have taken up from this whole experience, that there are and because of that we have been able to reach out to a larger geography and reach out to more kind of consumers spread across a larger region. And even like RCT itself, our dealership itself is located at, you'll say C grade city, but we have been able to generate consumers from even D and E grade of city, such locations that you might even know names of. So that is something that has been a key takeaway, that the market exists everywhere if you can reach the consumer for even the luxury segment, and be it cars or bikes or wherever. So that has been a key takeaway for us.
Santosh, for you as the brand, as the marketer, as the manufacturer?
So for us, firstly, it gave, there are 2-3 aspects to it. One, in the COVID digitalization, I think all of them have spoken about the impact of digitalization, online sales, transparency. In fact, even before the first wave of COVID, when we launched our online store, the question was who will buy a Mercedes-Benz online. But now we see close to 20% of the consumers able to shop around and do things, at least the more you offer transparency. The second thing is a big wave for personal mobility and luxury mobility. I think that something came up because of intra-city travel. Today, customers don't travel Bombay to Delhi, Delhi to Jaipur, or Bombay to say Goa by flights. They prefer to go by cars, and then they prefer for luxury cars. So definitely we see a change in the trend and patterns, and that also explains the demand side a bit more. Also, for the first time, consumers saw green skies, the environment being better when everything was standstill. So, right from OEMs, along with our dealers, all of us used to say, automotive is not the cause of current concern or pollution and stuff. It's somebody else. But at least when everything was standstill, we saw the blue skies and then the birds chirping, you could see all those tweets, etc. Then there was a realization, yes, and we should now look at sustainability. And there is a big awareness here when you look at the entire electric drive momentum, which is significant, because 18 months back, you could not have thought of such a momentum for EVs in India. They would all look up to the government for charging infrastructure. But now today, that's not the case. And last not the least is the business model itself, because today OEMs thought that keeping stocks at partners, loading them with more and more stocks, and then increasing cost may make them sell more vehicles. But during the COVID, when there was a pressure in the system, the stock levels were brought down significantly. We still saw cars and bikes and others being sold. Unwanted cost, I think Amitji mentioned, that has gone out of the system. Better profitability, so we are able to also manage better. And because the demand is higher than supply, the margin retention is also very high right now. So this also means for OEMs like us, for sure we see an opportunity that this is the right time to also challenge the business model and see, is there a better way to do business? So I think the last 12 to 18 months time, of course, has been a lot of learnings for us as well as our partners also.
Interesting, really, really interesting. I'll come back to you, Amit. You spoke about the introspection that you went through. I mean, you, Utkarsh, all three of you have spoken about introspection, right? And you've talked about, the momentum of, let's say, two things increasing. One is, greener mobility and sustainability that Santosh spoke of. And the other is the momentum of the digital, interface increasing with the customer.
Absolutely.
Now, does this actually mean that the physical interface has come down, or does the physical interface get manifested in another way?
No, it has been a physical thing is not down. Physical interaction to customer is not less now, but yes, digital has supported us to reach to more customers, more sales, and good customer experience, a better customer experience than before. So more customers using digital, getting more leads, getting more sales, getting customer is aware more, like COVID has given us this. Today I'm sitting in London and talking to you, I'm if I haven't told you that I am sitting in London and attending a webinar, you won't feel that I'm so far away. So that's with the customer also. We have come very close to customer because of digital, in terms of lead generation, in terms of, whatever he wants, we can give him a much better experience than before.
And the physical interface, how has that improved? You said, because we are offering our customers also better experiences. So one is the digital experience, which you very nicely talked about, which is increasing reach, supporting your entire process, building greater awareness, and bringing you closer to your prospective customers. In terms of the physical experience, what introspection and improvements typically would you have brought about?
Now when our consultant or our general manager meet customer, he meets for a meaningful dialogue, not for unproductive jobs like collecting papers, because the papers now can be collected online and can be transferred to the financier for getting the vehicle financed and everything. Now he's meeting only for the meaningful dialogue, like giving him a test drive and closing the deal, which is the most important part. And that should be very, very productive and very, very experiential also. So he's not bothered about rest of the things, unproductive things that can be done online, can be put in the financier portal and all these things. So it has improved our efficiency as well as he's not worried about when he's gone to meet to the customer. He's now going for a more meaningful dialogue, so he's more prepared, and and the conversion is better. So that's what I can say.
Okay, Utkarsh, you spoke about going out to class B, class C towns, right? Reaching out and customers actually coming to you from there. While this is of course inevitable, because that is the way penetration happens. Do you see a new kind of customer coming to you, or is the customer that comes in Jamshedpur or Ranchi or Kolkata, is that customer the same that say comes from say Durgapur or Kalyani or say from a smaller, say from Betia? Are there any difference in the customers, or this is a new kind of customer that's actually now taking to buying luxury products?
Yeah, it's actually a mix. Customers are like, they earlier would think that it is too far-fetched, like earlier when we are not reaching digital modes or yet. So the customer is also thinking that it is too far-fetched and it's no use in inquiring about the vehicle, because he's already assuming there's a lot of assumptions in small towns that are there. So that is one part. And apart from that, even it's not some even the existing set of customers like who already are into the foray, they might be considering some product, but just making up their mind. And then if we are able to catch them early on and be in conversation with him, just is in touch with them early on, so that really helps mold their decision making and help them convert towards bar dealership rather than somewhere else. So it's a mix, I will say. It's not like it's just entire new or the existing only, it's a mix.
Okay, Santosh, I'll come to you with these two questions. First is, do you see new kinds of customers coming to you, which is not only demographic, but also psychographically? That's one. And the second is, you said that you've gone back to 2018 levels. Now, it's great to hear that, because the rest of the industry, is actually talking about getting back to 2018 levels, possibly in another 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now. Okay, the commercial vehicle industry was talking about 10 to 11 years, right? Now, but the 2018 levels by themselves were not really great to talk of, because this entire segment, it's somewhere stagnated. I mean, you guys are hitting the same numbers plus or minus 10% as a segment for the last, say, 6 to 7 years. So what would you say on both these counts?
Yeah, so if you look at the luxury car market, the peak was at around 40,000 units put across all the manufacturers. We doing around 16,000 odd cars at that point of time. And that was the peak, and then slowly started coming down for various reasons. Now I won't go into the transitionary issues, BS6 and others. There are two fundamental issues in India. And I think when you look into it, you should look at it from two prisms. One is the policy structure. So if you see, it's not only the luxury segment, but any car more than 4 meter is taxed at 48% plus duties. So if you look at, for a moment, take away the luxury segment, even premium or so-called whatever below the luxury segment, that's only 22% of total India's car sales this year. 78% is still the sub 4 meter. So for us, we take a lot of pride that India is the biggest car market, and automotive market is great, but it's the sub 4 meter at 28% of GST which is there, and this 20% says the moment you put on anything, not only on the luxury car but even on sub premium, the segment just doesn't expand. That's one part of it. Now, why don't people come in and buy cars, which are expensive cars? India is such a great economy. We read about GDP and other topics. So I think fundamentally is also our behavior. We are much more a saving economy to start with. Because there is less of social security as a country, we tend to save for the unforeseen. As a culture, we tend to save for children, for ourselves, for medical expenses. So because the social security net is just not there. So that drives a consumption into more fixed assets like housing and very less into depreciating assets like cars, superbikes and others, because everybody is getting there. And also, if you look at the mutual funds, last couple of months, if you see the mutual fund industry, the SIP industry is exceeded 48,000 odd crores, and the amount of money coming every month is significant. So again, it's not that money is not there. It's all that people want to save this for an uncertain future. So one, by the culturally inclination towards not spending here. Second, also because we don't want to, we want to save. And third, from the government policies, these cars become too expensive, or bikes, whichever category, whichever falls in the 20% cess bracket is expensive. The market is just not able to expand. And this is where the stagnation, not only for the luxury car manufacturers, but also other OEMs who all came in, with good cars and good products, but they just are not able to succeed after some point of time. So for us, it's very clear, and I can say that many of the luxury OEMs also worldwide, these products are made for the global audience. Customer demands are different. We, of course, customize a car for India, like the long wheelbase C-Class, or you can also talk about the bad road suspension package. But in general, the car is the same. So we will never come up with a sub 4 meter kind of a thing in India. And this also means that till the time the policy structure is like this and the consumers are not, the cultural change doesn't happen. And you can see that actually. I think Utkarsh mentioned this topic of YOLO and others. Post-COVID, because your first question was about demographics and psychographics, we see a lot of people now buying cars who are hesitant to buy such luxury products from different parts of India. Younger people buying cars, they are not waiting for that saving. They may take an insurance product and then hope insurance takes care of the future, and they are still able to spend cars and money. So that's something that we see now as a trend, this YOLO phenomena, but I think it's still less. Frankly, we are the only brand who is publishing numbers on a quarterly basis. So even if we go by guesstimate, the industry is still not there. And I think we need much more of cultural change with hopefully some taxation rationalization. As we move to EVs, I think that's the big opportunity India has for the overall consumers to participate in the growth story. So maybe there is some rationalization when it comes to EVs and others, and maybe then the growth should take a hockey stick at some point of time.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, I guess we've all been waiting for the hockey stick growth at some point of time, okay, in the country, because we're still looking at a penetration of 24, 25 per thousand. Okay, that's where we are right now after all these years. So penetration, I agree, is a critical issue, because I dare say very clearly that the government, even today, in spite of all our posturing, still thinks that the individual automobile is a luxury item. Okay, even if it is a sub 4 meter one, but the fact that even a motorcycle, a 100cc motorcycle, is also possibly considered as a luxury item. So therefore, metaphysically, we may say that the luxury market is the entire market, because when a policymakers consider the individual automobile as a luxury item, then the entire thing is a luxury market. Okay, you spoke of this interesting thing of the cultural change that is required to move away from the tendency only to save, or primarily to save. It's interesting, and I'll start again with you, Santosh, and then go to Utkarsh and Amit on this. With the new generation coming, okay, and these are all people who are definitely younger than us, or possibly Utkarsh's age. right? And young, say Gen Z, what we talk about. I mean, in your studies, in your researches, do you find that their basic fundamental attitude towards life is different? I mean, are they ready to experiment more? Do they actually embody the spirit of YOLO that Utkarsh spoke about?
So let me give some statistics. You know, when we launched the new S-Class EV or the GLS Maybach, our average age is below 40 years. So it's not earlier time S-Classes and Maybachs, the average age used to be in the range of 50. And now we are seeing, the 38, 40 guys and even younger guys buying some expensive, super expensive cars. So that's one trend, but that's at the top end of the pyramid. And when you also, the other trend is we run an online store as well as, we do a good amount of business in our boutiques and collection business. And there we see a lot of customers buying other Mercedes-Benz merchandise, like cycles and others. They don't own the brand, they don't own our cars, but they want to have the brand with them. And these are also expensive, compared to what's available. A cycle costs 1.5 lakh rupees, or even when I look at a clock, it's some 7,000-8,000 bucks, or perfumes are 10. So they are still ready to pay premium. And we feel the brand is aspirational, consumers are there. The other thing is many of these so-called Gen Z, whatever we call, they are also going abroad and studying. They are exposed to many of the cars, bikes, whatever, because when they are studying abroad. So when they come back, they also push their conservative households that, hey, I want to now own this. I want to drive these good bikes or cars, etc. So we can see that shift happening. And now we also see a tremendous first-time buyers coming in directly to luxury. That means they never had another car. And maybe they joined some consulting firm, young guys, and then they're straight away buying luxury cars. But if you ask whether it's a huge effect which will now turn the luxury car market now grow in double digits significantly, the answer is no. So to be candid, it would take time. The positive is we are seeing those green shoots, but hopefully this should now continue. And maybe I will also elaborate on the policy topic, because, this is where you mentioned the government sees automotive category as a luxury, and it's a fact, only 14% can afford a two-wheeler car or anything in India. The rest use public transport. So whether we make an industry, we put money in people's pockets so they can afford cars and bikes. And for that, you need to look outward. That means our industry has to be more export oriented. We get money from outside, we make people richer, and then they buy cars and bikes. Or the current outlook is we are a big 1.3 billion nation. So we have the market. So why don't we make it internally and sell internally? But the key point is maybe 26% or above don't have money in their pocket to buy these cars or bikes, or even at the lower category. So somewhere it's also, I think there is a good shift happening. I think the recently PLI scheme and others are aspirations to develop future manufacturing and capabilities in India. Maybe with some policy shift, also with this younger generation coming, we can see that tipping point coming maybe a bit soon, hopefully.
Yeah, inshallah. All of us hope it comes, much earlier than what most of us can predict. And you did raise this important issue of how many people can actually afford. Okay, because only when you enjoy personal mobility, okay, maybe either by yourself or you've actually had it in the family, will you want to go out and take that step into owning a piece of luxury mobility, right? Just to share another statistic with all of you, while we have a lot of people taking public transport, there are close to 400 million Indians. Let's not talk about as to what socioeconomic strata they belong to. There are 400 million Indians who still walk to work, okay, because they can't afford even public transport. So that is where we are right now. Utkarsh, when Santosh was talking about, the first-time buyers, Santosh was talking about the younger age, the average age of, say, a luxury car buyer coming down. Do you experience the same in the place you sell in? Because traditionally the East has always been known to be two things. One is known to be conservative. Conservative in the sense, you have this typical thing of, I don't want to show off, right? Therefore, I will not buy a big brand because, in my community, people will think that I'm showing off and they like to make fun of me. That's one. And the second is, you generally can't afford, because people in the East, when you look at their per capita income, it is the lowest as a region compared to the rest of the country. So, in your last, the experience that you've had over the last 12 to 14 months of people coming in from B class towns, C class towns, what typically is their profile and what typically is their mindset?
So I would say that it's not like it is coming down. I will say like there's a difference over here. It's that, compared to the age of buyer is coming down. It's not like that. Earlier it has always been the youth over here, which is the buyer. And like for example, earlier when the youth was not so, like what you said, that people go outside, like what Mr. Santosh said, that people go abroad and they study and they come back and they see, observe things, and then it changes their mind, and then they are, more inclined towards increasing their lifestyle or whatever it is. So that is something that has been happening over here. So since that has been happening at this stage in the past 5-10 years, it is more prominent that this is happening, that people are going not just abroad, like anywhere in India, for example, people are going Bombay, Delhi, anywhere. So that is seeing a huge uptrend. So people, so this mindset block, like what you said, that what will people think, or I think it's not just East, but it's pan-India small town mentality, where you go into a small town, this mentality comes in a bit. And in East, most of the towns are small towns. So that is how I think this thing aggravates. So this is something that has been changing since people have been traveling more. People have been, they have more friends on a pan-India level. So as this thing goes on increasing, this trend will keep on increasing. So it's not like, so the average age of a buyer has always been low over here. And the number of people who are buying, that is increasing slowly.
Okay, that's interesting to note. And obviously it's a generational change,
Yes.
which maybe, because you guys are into it every day and you experience it. For a person like me, only when I interact, do I get to see the generational change. I mean, I have a batchmate of mine from business school. He's an extremely senior professional in the Tata Group. Okay, and he's just moved to, Tata Electronics, which is their new setup in Hosur. And he was told that, you're entitled to buy a vehicle around 50 lakhs. And he called me up and said that, can I go for a Toyota? Man, I don't want to be seen driving one of those, those uber luxury brands. So I said, why? What's wrong? Because your colleagues will do the same. He says, no, listen, I'm going to retire in a few years. I'm going to take this car with me when I go back to Kolkata. Come on. The place where I stay, I'm going to be seen around in a Mercedes-Benz or an Audi. I mean, you must be crazy. I think I'll go for a Fortuner. Now, that's a different generation altogether. Okay, and I understand what you, and I get a hang of what you guys are saying, because I again have a few friends, okay, who are younger, much younger than me, and they are into startups. So for them, they've broken the mental barriers to something. Earlier, you used to have the barrier that I can't afford. But affordability as a concept itself has seen a huge change. So Amit, coming to you, when you go out and promote the Jaguar or the Land Rover brands to your customers, I mean, how do you break firstly, I mean, is there any barrier of affordability in them? If there is, how do you go about breaking it?
See, what Santosh has just mentioned, that we have seen a green shoot now. So now what I see, luxury car brands are a way of life for few Indians. So the green shoot is correct, what Santosh is saying. But, and also what I have seen, it is now no more of a show off. The customers are starting fitting in the luxury brands or luxury cars. So that's a very good sign, from showing off to fitting in, and it's a way of life for few chunk of people, yes. But we should grow this. We should further these kind of people. These numbers should increase. What Santosh has mentioned is absolutely correct. But what I see, like a Land Rover brand is quite a brand full of SUVs, and which actually younger generation likes, very macho like SUVs, very rough and tough. And so the new Defender, which only, people below 30 years of age or 40 years of age only coming to see that car and buying those cars, below 40 years of age, not above 40, and so Land Rover is always, it was a brand for younger generation. And yes, of course, when you go up high in the model portfolio, Range Rovers and autobiographies, they are all for, for 50 plus people or 45 plus people. So now I can see from top to bottom, a lot of young people are coming in, and they're not coming for showing off. They're fitting in the brand or the SUVs what they want. So we can see a very positive movement here. But yes, as Santosh said, this has to be kicked off really well with the support of the government or whatever it is, So
Avik, just to add
just
to add to what Amit is saying, what you mentioned psychographically, your 50 years now, his business card will do the job of his social stature, because everybody knows that he has done something in life. Now imagine a startup like Epsilon. Ye banda, now he cannot take his house. He may be staying in Bridge Candy in Bombay, but he cannot tell others that, I stay in Bridge Candy. So what can he show to say that my startup is doing extremely well? I have got 2 rounds of funding. That's a luxury car. And that's the answer to some of these young guys. Also, they don't want to wait, and they buy these cars, flaunt, also to tell their clients, their investors that, I have made it now. And that's something, a very good tool to quickly communicate. And of course, they can also wear a lot of branded stuff, but that's also becoming common nowadays. So a car and others really shows the stature, and also you can communicate how your business is doing well. So all the young guys, for them to communicate the car or, bikes, sport bikes, they all become a accessory to also say at what life stage they are, which is not required by a 50-plus-year-old guy going to retire in 5 years, because his business card may do the job for him.
Absolutely. All three of you pick up a very, very important point, which may be, one of the key takeaways that we have from the discussion today, that there was a point of time in our lives when owning a luxury brand was the destination. Today, it's part of the journey. Okay, so earlier, very frankly, we would think that, when I reach that particular level, when I am a GM or a vice president, man, I shall go ahead and buy the Mercedes-Benz or the BMW or the Audi or the Jaguar. Today, a guy thinks that I don't need to wait that long. I really don't know what's really going to happen 20 years hence. But right now, why should I actually deprive myself and even my family, for that matter, okay, from this particular joy of owning a mark that earlier was owned by just a few people. And Amit, you also raised a very interesting point. I mean, you spoke about it, saying that it's sporty. So somewhere again in our minds we are making these very, very, very subtle but important distinctions between being luxury and being sporty. It's like the difference between one who buys a Rolex versus one who buys a Tag Heuer. Okay, the one who buys a Tag is necessarily sporty, right? And he or she will never buy a Rolex, because a Rolex is more about, I've finally arrived in life, and
yeah, true.
So it's about the destination. Okay, and that's also, Santosh, you would agree with me, that's also how Tag actually positioned themselves. So there were Swiss watches and Swiss watches, but all the Swiss watches were necessarily luxury brands. And here was Tag, which came up saying we are a sport brand. Okay, so when you talk about Land Rover being bought by younger people who are sporty, so they do not necessarily see Land Rover as a luxury brand. They possibly see Land Rover as the best manifestation of their sport intent. Okay, so it's nice to hear this, because the more this happens, the more our market actually matures, and then hopefully at some point in time we would actually see it growing. Okay, beyond the numbers that we have today. So I'll come to that point of, because all three of you are not so much Utkarsh, but Amit and Santosh, you've talked about the change in mindset of the policymakers, right? Into acknowledging the fact that a personal automobile is actually a symbol of progress, right? And not necessarily a symbol of wealth. So in that, now if you find that the policymaker is not really going ahead and taking steps on this front, what would you, okay, firstly, what would you, Santosh, as the owner of the brand, do to make the product more affordable? Okay, and what would you, both Amit and Utkarsh, go back and tell your brand owners, okay, either in JLR or in BMW, on how to go ahead and make the brand more affordable and more accessible to people? Firstly, Santosh, what would you do?
So, Avik, firstly, on the policy making side, one important topic we missed is also, which is helping the growth for luxury cars and other categories, also the improvement of road infrastructure. Actually, to give credit to where it's due, in the last 5 to 7 years, the amount of kind of road infrastructure that has come up, the quality of roads that has come up, I think is incredible. And so many expressways. So, even now, I traveled Hyderabad driving myself, and even to the south. So I don't feel that honors, what will happen? The infrastructure is good. There are good places, to stop midway. So I think that's also accelerating to some extent demand. So that's some give credit to also the policymakers to go aggressive on this infrastructure spree. On the other side, I think we are all corporates, and end of the day, we don't have to look into government to support. Then we are not enterprises. We are private enterprises, and we need to know to do business based on the current regulatory and business environment. As Mercedes-Benz, we have taken the best out of it in the last 25 years. We have set up, invested more than 2,000 odd crores in this market, continue to do it. We bought the first BS6 car in India way back in 2018. We bought the luxury electric cars. We are committed more. So I think we will learn to play within the system. But then the other question of affordability. We are not in that volume game. Frankly, the brand is not positioned to just sell and be for the market share. We are here to give a luxury experience to customers. And for that, we are trying to change the game in sales and distribution model. We are trying to change the game in the kind of products we are trying to offer to consumers. And here, I think that the consumers deserve the best of products. And frankly, can we now cater to 20% of the population, or can we cater to only 1.5% of the population? That can be a big question. But we won't dilute the core brand in the quest for volumes also. So we need to have that balance where we make the best of our capacities, also bring the latest products. But on the other side, it doesn't mean that we don't want to reduce prices. The kind of content which goes, frankly, if I take out duties, a Mercedes-Benz sold in India may be cheaper than many other parts of the world because there is so much of content in the car. We are not able to make as much of money with the same car in India because there are duties. Now, there are valid reasons. I already mentioned the 20% cess that's there, and maybe there is a wisdom in the government that maybe this is the right way to do it, and policymakers. So for us as an OEM, we will play by the game what is let out. Our only request to the policy making is for policy stability. So if there is now a low GST on electric, continue. If there is no registration taxes for EVs in states, continue. Because car is like running the OEMs are like steering a ship. By the time you turn, the ship turns. You start turning sometime back the shaft, and by the time it turns, it takes time, and then you don't want to be heading in a wrong direction. So we only request the government to be stable in policies, and I think they have their own valid reasons why the policy is as it is. And as private enterprise, we will play by the rule of the land and how we can optimize business here.
Okay, Amit, what's your take?
As a dealer, I can say two things to OEM when I go back to them. Number one is to launch more exciting products, more and more new exciting products, so that more and more customers should walk into our showroom, or we get more inquiries and we sell more, right? And we can expand our brand spectrum or pie, whatever. So, and number two, if they can cut down some cost, that will be wonderful. But exciting products, if we have to play around within the set parameters, what government has set, what everything is set. We have to play around under that. So the more and more exciting products is what we required as a luxury car dealership. So more the excitement, more the customers, more the inquiries, more the sales. That's what I can say.
Okay.
That's what I can ask for.
Okay.
Rather, Santoshji is laughing.
Yeah. Utkarsh,
I'll also
what do
agree
you
that
think?
I'll also agree that we have. I think none of us are in a position to influence the decision of a policymaker, or there's no point in voicing our concerns. There's a proper platform for that, be it FADA or whatever is there. SIAM is there. But they are the people who are in a position who are supposed to do that. So that is a proper channel through which whatever concerns are there that can be voiced with the policymaker related to the OEM, rather than like what you said, that what can be done for making the products more accessible to the consumer. Rather than accessibility, currently the scenario is about availability. More than anything else, it's not about making it accessible to the people, it's about making it available. Like when the market is witnessing an uptrend, it's a cyclic, cycles come in every business. So when the cycle is witnessing an uptrend, so I understand that at the OEM level also there can be a lot of limitations. But at that time, the OEM should make it possible to have provide all the kind of supplies that are required by the market, so that most of the customers, bookings, orders can be catered to, and that creates a market basically when there is a demand. So that's what is required. Otherwise, genius people sitting in the companies as well. So I'm sure they also always keep on coming up with the innovative financial products, and everything is there. So that's what basically I can request to the OEM. That's all.
Yeah, interesting. You talked about the innovative financial products. So do you think these innovative financial products they play an important role in making these badges more accessible to people? I mean, for example, I'll just take a simple example. I'm saying, if I want to go ahead and say buy a luxury badge, and someone tells me that okay, you need to pay all the money through EMIs, right? And well, that's the way it is. And after a 5-year or a 7-year loan, you pay off the loan, and the vehicle is yours or whatever. Versus if someone were to say, no, you pay me only for 3 years, okay, or 4 years, and after that, I take the vehicle back, and you can take another vehicle of your choice. You can decide to stay on in the brand, or if you're not really happy with me, then you can move to another brand. Now, are these strategies, okay, which can actually help in improving accessibility?
See, I think over here is that you need to have a bouquet of products. Like it's not like one product will be super hit, or some product will not be accepted. So it's like some product is suitable to some person, and some product might be suitable for another person, and might not be suitable for the first person. So if you have a variety of products, you have a bouquet, so it can be done.
Okay, Santosh, Mercedes-Benz has also tried out new things. Right. In fact, I dare say, with complete respect to all the other brands, that we've always seen you guys trying out new things a bit ahead of the others in the marketplace. And I'm sure you guys are trying out something new, right? It must be, because it's been quite some time since you actually announced something disruptive. So would you like to share something that you're allowed to share as of now?
So we said our intent. We have a new business model for retailing in India, which is called the Retail of the Future. Now, this will come live end of this year itself, which is in Q4. And as I did a brief mention, the current business model is as OEMs, any OEMs today pushes the car to the dealers. The dealers then try to sell it off to the market. What happens here are 2-3 issues. Number one, the stock, and India being a very high interest rate country, the stock cost starts eating up into profit. Today, that situation doesn't arise with many, because everybody has forgotten 12 months back, everybody was loaded with cars. But now the demand is more, stocks are not pinching, so all are happy in the current context. But frankly, we cannot forget how the industry has been operating for so many years, and this will come back. It's a matter of time. In 6 to 12 months time, the semiconductor is sorted. Utkarsh also starts getting maximum cars. Everybody gets cars and it's loaded. So that's one evil that we are trying to solve. The second is, moment you push something to the dealer partner, it's very natural that he will sell what he has in stock, because then if a customer comes to the showroom and asks for that blue car, and if he doesn't have the blue car, he will try to desell, because the consultant wants to earn his incentive for the month, the dealer wants to get rid of the stock, so he will say, you know, the blue starts fading a lot, so I will recommend to go with the white. And frankly, a customer buying a high ticket will always, and not only in India, this is a global phenomenon. So what I'm saying is, it's across, the behavior is there. The third, in all this, the customer also feels that maybe let me get the best deal. So he's going to two partners, and in some of the cases there are 3 partners, 4 partners in a city, and he's shopping around. There is intra-brand competition, in which is fair enough. I think they are all competing for that customer. So in one sense, but just imagine or remember one thing: not every customer is getting the best deal, because he feels he got it. Next day, his friend or his colleague bought a car or a bike at a lower price. He feels shortchanged. Either he doesn't believe the sales consultant, or he doesn't believe in luxury car segment. Many of the cars are bought by people who are known to the dealer principals, you know, because they know a lot of the circle, and then they feel, "Arey, you are I was your best friend of yours, but somebody else is giving me, maybe out of southern part of India, why is he giving me a car cheaper?" And then one has to explain. They lose friendships, they lose relationships because of all this. So this is the sad part. What we are trying to do now is, we are saying stock is OEM responsibility, so we will keep the stock. We take a big step of giving full transparency of stock to customers. So whatever is there in MB India, along with what will be produced by us in 3 months down the line, we will show this to the market, to the customer, to select his preferred win that he wants, so that he can buy the car. The third topic is on pricing. We will be competitive, because we are in a market where we have very strong competition. So we will be competitive. We will give discounts, we will give offers, but it will be limited to that customer will get the same offer wherever he goes. So now the focus for the retailer, because this is also about future of retailing, the focus for the retailer is customer experience. It's not about anything else. It's about efficiency, because today the same guy is coming and taking test drives in 3 dealerships. It's not required. Maybe the time to close a sale is much faster, because he is now coming, getting a test drive, trying to do. So we are bringing down costs. We are ensuring customer gets a better experience. We are going to put this online. That means if there are 2 or 3 partners in a city, their customer rating scores are all visible. So whoever gives customer the better experience is, when I say better experience, is right from quotation, test drive, product explanation, handover, delivery. All those topics which are today ignored, not only for luxury, but even in general, should be taken care of. So this is the big move we are doing. I should really thank our dealer partners for believing in us. We started this project some time back. We had a lot of deliberations, a lot of consultation. We have them on board. They are looking forward for it, because, as I said, if you look into the current context, because of supply-demand situation, it's a different issue. But, you know, we need to be prepared for the future. And frankly, with EVs coming in, if we don't take care of the distribution cost, the sales and marketing costs, we will not be competitive. A customer will only start buying EVs when the cost of the EV is as good as an IC engine. There the government has done its job. They have reduced the on-road price by taking away registration charges. So now for us to reduce the cost of these cars, we need to take some of these steps. So we call it retail of the future model. This is a model where the customer wins. Our partners, now they will be called as franchisee partner, wins. And for us, we can focus and we can get a better pulse of the market, because there is transparency on stock, on pricing, customer data, protection. So this is something we are going to unveil in a much more bigger way. Also, I think when we started the conversation, there was a lot of discussion on digital, you know, customers coming digital. In our view, the customer experience will only be seamless if we give an omni-channel experience. Today, there is no brand, I can tell you, there is no brand which can give the price online and deliver the same offline, because the prices will change. For sure, there is competition. But what we want to do is, we want to give an omni-channel experience where what you see online, what you see with our franchisee partner across will all be the same. You can book the car any which ways. But the big question is, are we looking at an online model? The answer is no. We are in luxury business, and we feel the customer experience is super important. So the franchisee partners will remain forever within our new model. That's a commitment we have given to our partners. It's not a model like some of the startups come in that they think they can sell directly to customers. We feel the customers buy with the local preference, the connect that they have locally with a partner of ours. So we'll continue franchisee partners. They become more stronger financially. And Avik, you have been part of the automotive industry. I think in sales, nobody makes money, right? The dealer partners. Then the entire tendency is to make money then from customer service after sales. And there the customer is again shortchanged. With our model, I think our partners can also make reasonably profits on the sales side. And this means our customers get a better experience in the after sales world, because they will be also fair enough in trying to be as transparent as possible and also as cost efficient as possible. So this is the big change. It's not one step, because to do this we need a lot of changes in IT, in registrations, in many topics. So that's something coming up, I think, but we will share more details once we do the launch, maybe in the Q4 of this year.
Very interesting. Thanks a lot for sharing this with all of us, Santosh, because it definitely throws up a different scenario, which, as you said, is omni-channel and therefore more holistic and more immersive. And secondly, of course, it also, I'm sure the other brands are also working on similar omni-channel experiences, because whenever you meet a consultant nowadays, one of their buzzwords nowadays is omni-channel. Okay, I mean, they have omni-channel experts in them, and that is where I think they get most of their revenues from, consulting all guys like you in creating better customer experiences. So, and also you addressed a very, very important point of, will the physical showroom at any point of time wither away? Okay, because many people feel that the showroom, I'm not talking about the experience center, talking about a separate dealer showroom or a separate network partner showroom, okay, moving forward tomorrow, okay, may not be required at all. What the customer really needs as part of his or her omni-channel immersive experience is to experience the product, okay, test drive it, possibly spend a few hours with it, especially if it's a luxury product. You can't possibly spend a few hours with, say, a sub 4 meter hatchback, but to spend a few hours with it. And then, of course, everything, I mean, all the other paperwork will be digitized. So you just physically deliver the product, again, at a place of his or her choice, home, office, club, wherever. And then the rest of it is all physical, right? Which is the after sales part. So Amit, what do you foresee, say 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Like, for example, you said you have X number of establishments of all your brands, okay, in Delhi NCR, right? Yeah. So 15 years from now, and today, when you say it obviously with a huge sense of pride, because the physical edifice that you have actually stands for what your brand is. So there's a brand Shiva, and the edifice that you have in the form of a showroom and a service center is what your brand, connotes and denotes there. 15 years later, would it actually be the same, or do you think that your physical manifestation as a network partner would change?
See, there are lots of mixed thought about it, because when I see a customer who is buying either a motorcycle or a luxury car of 1 crore or buying a motorcycle of 60, 70, 80,000. So for buying a 80,000 rupees a motorcycle, it's a big thing for him, because as per his means and resources, that's a lot of money. And buying a car of 1 crore or 70 lakhs or 1 crore or 2.5 crore and above, that's him. For him, it's a big money. He's buying a car of his own stature. So both the customers buying 80,000 rupees motorcycle or KTM, which is 2 lakh, 2.5 lakhs, which is or a Husqvarna or a Mahindra car or a Jaguar Land Rover or any other luxury brand. So the kind of money what customer is ready to spend to buy a mobility for himself, it's the maximum amount they stretch, because in India still owning a vehicle is a status symbol. It is like in his society he is buying the best out of it. So that's still the same, and for that he needs experience to take a test drive, to look, touch and feel, to come to the showroom, to see all the colors, all the models at the same time, and test drive it, and understand the features physically there. So what I personally feel, yes, definitely, in 15 years down the line, customer will be coming less to our showroom, will be more, because if the EV space is growing, will grow in a faster pace, then only 3 things will be required, like a mobile phone, like was the power of the car, and was the charging time, and was the mileage, how much I can run for a single charge. So yes, definitely, that it will be very easy, like buying a mobile phone, right? इसका टाइम क्या है, इसका वन आफ्टर चार्ज कितने टाइम ये चलता है, पूरे दिन चलेगा या नहीं चलेगा, और दिखने में कैसा है. Then same way, buy either low priced or buy an Apple. So it will be more the same kind of a market. But still, what I feel, in mobile phone, the quantum of money spent is very, very less, and buying an automobile, it's a decision of it's a high ticket size decision. So what I personally feel, that touch and feel will be there, yes, but a lot of decision will be taken online, right? Buying decision, lot of decision will be taken online, from the digital platforms, from our website, or from the OEM website. So yes, of course, physical coming or customer visiting to our showroom will be less. Yes, definitely, yes, but it will not be zero, because he will come to choose colors, or he will come for the experience. He will come, so enthusiast will come to see his car, servicing. Like I see 20% of still 10 to 20% of the customer, they're so enthusiastic about their whatever vehicle they possess. So they want to come and they want to see how we service us, how we take care of their vehicle while we are doing a job on that for after sales, and same thing is in sales also. So what I feel, yes, the dependence will be less, but it will not be completely like what everybody is thinking, that there will be no showrooms for automobile, because it's a very high ticket value item, and it will continue to be a very high ticket value item. So what I feel, that yes, showrooms will be there. Yes, the space might be smaller now. I have every showroom is 5,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet, and the workshop is 1 lakh square feet. The space might be not such huge, but yeah, but the presence of showrooms will make the difference in future always.
Okay, you raised some very, very interesting points. I think Utkarsh has left us, maybe a network issue with him. We just hope that he joins back. So I'll come back to you, Amit, on this, just taking from what you shared with us, which is, if the showroom experience is so important, and I agree with you, and it is so differentiated. Now, for example, when a customer comes to a Jaguar showroom, okay, how do you and the brand working together, how do you create an experience which is quite different from when he or she walks into a Mercedes-Benz showroom, or an Audi, or a Volvo?
The sets of processes set by the OEM, and yes, see now the processes of all the brands are same. We just can't say that the process of Mercedes-Benz is better, or Jaguar Land Rover is better, or the BMW is better. Now the market has evolved, and we are sitting on a much more matured market in terms of systems and processes in the showroom or workshop. It is equally equally comparable to international standards, or I should say in India, because we have lots of manpower availability, so they are much better also because the personalized touch is there. So what we personally look for the customers who are coming to our dealership, to give them more personalized experience, much more personalized, interaction to the customers and everything. That's what can make a difference. More personalized, connect with the customer. That's really help. And it's clearly evident if I analyze the performance of my sales consultant, or sales managers selling the cars, who is better to make a personal connect with the customer. He is buying a repeated purchase from our dealership. When his car he wants to dispose of, he wants to buy new, or if he wants to buy a car for his wife or kids or dad or granddad or whosoever in the family, so he comes back to us. So personal connect is very, very important, and that's what we look for. The customer should be connected in a much better way than process, because the processes are almost everywhere same, as I'm repeating the statement again. So personal connect is what makes us sell more, and we emphasize on our dealership, and we always guide our sales force to make a personal connect with the customer. If that is there, the job is 200% done. Right. Because the personal connect is there, then you have confidence, then transparency problem, what Mr. Santosh has said, that's also taken care of, and everything is sorted. That's what.
Right. Utkarsh is back. Yeah, Utkarsh. Okay. Well, I'll come to you, Utkarsh. Because you have in your portfolio both a BMW car showroom or a car setup, and you also have the Motorrad setup. Okay, so in the two, do you actually provide different kinds of experiences, or because the brand DNA being the same, the way you approach a car buyer or a car prospect, okay, is almost the same as the way you approach a two-wheeler or a motorcycle prospect?
It's, I'll say more or less it is the same only, but the customer set is quite different. The kind of things that the customer is expecting is a bit different in both the segments. But yes, the kind of approach that we are having is much more simpler, much more similar. But I'll say major difference is that in the bike segment, the approach will be, it's not a more serious kind of conversation that you'll be having with the consumer. You don't have to pitch the product to the consumer in the case of Motorrad. You have to, just give him the confidence to go ahead with the purchase, and other things you have to facilitate, like finance and whatever is the query of the consumer regarding his purchase, whatever afterthoughts that he is having, that you have to convince him. You don't have to, you don't need to pitch the product, I will say, in that segment. But in car, you need to do the product pitching as well, and all the other things of the sales process that is also required to be sold. So I'll say yes, there is difference, but the process to be followed is basically the same.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'll come to this thing about your car showroom. So how do you pitch the BMW brand, okay, vis-a-vis a Jaguar, a Mercedes-Benz, or an Audi? How do you do that? I mean, what difference do you create in the experience that when your prospect walks out and says that, yeah, okay, this was quintessentially BMW, cannot be replicated by anybody else?
So there are two things. One is the product related. That one is the sheer driving pleasure, that the motto that the BMW follows. So that is something that we say that it cannot be replicated, which is applicable pan-India. And the second thing, which is specific to our region, is that after sales part. So that is something that we have a really strong emphasis on, that any consumer looking to, make a purchase in the luxury segment. And we have a good after sales team, and we have a regular and kind of stable establishment, unlike other OEMs in the area, which have the consumers have not been so satisfied, I'll say. So that becomes a sales pitch for us. So that is something which helps them to, if they are considering any luxury product, so that helps them lure into a BMW for us.
Okay, interesting. Santosh, now I come to you. Okay, and I'll ask you I wouldn't call it rude, but I'll call it a bit of a disturbing question, which is to the prospect, right, who wants to own a luxury badge. Do you think all of you brands are one amorphous mass, which means that, if I can go to a Mercedes-Benz showroom, I can go to Audi, I can go to BMW, and I can see all of them, and whichever one I like, I actually pick. I'm not too fastidious on the specific badge that I buy, as long as I buy a luxury badge. Okay, because as all of you said, that if I'm young, I'm showing that I'm doing well. Or if I'm as aged as I am, it's like obviously I have finally settled down well. Do you think all you badges at the end of the day to the Indian consumer, so it's like, Mercedes-Benz luxury, Audi luxury, BMW luxury, Volvo luxury, Jaguar luxury, Land Rover luxury. But there is really no clear differentiation when it comes to the mind of the customer, the prospect.
No, not at all, I would say, because if that was the case, we will not be able to command price premia, in the market. So technically speaking, there are loyalists. So 60% of customers to each of the brands, I would say, are loyalists who they are generally, because there is a DNA of the brand which one personally, individually can relate to. And it can be our competitors from Munich or Ingolstadt, and we from Stuttgart and all that stuff. So that's all there. And then we have the 40% of customers who are the shoppers. For them, it's also a criteria of the product, a bit of deal seekers. They also try and see what kind of a deal is happening. They tend to cross shop. And for those set of guys, they also place a certain value of every brand. So it's not that I need to be the cheapest to be sold to this customer. And this is exactly where the pricing and the transaction pricing then starts playing game with these guys. But today with the digital world, what they tend to do is this 60 or 40% also tends to make their decision on which brand they will finally buy. Because that also happens many a time before they reach the showroom. And there, of course, there are experiences which starts between brands. And this is not about the brand experience, but maybe the partner experience, because who was able to actually go with a code. Because many of the time, how the prospect thing is, you go digitally, you put a lead digitally, then you have a telecaller sitting somewhere gauging the customer's worth, whether he or she is ready to buy the car. And that's something a perennial issue. So whichever partner is able to give a better call, better experience, quicker to the customer, and there he or she starts leading into the preference of the brand. So it's not a generic that all customers, it's a commodity. There is no way. I think absolutely each brand has a very strong set of loyalists. And I keep saying that even if you are not existing as sales and marketing teams, we will sell 70-80% of our cars. It's a balanced 20% where there is a war between maybe brands and products and stuff. But that's important. That's equally important that we are able to increase our share, with a healthy competition, with good products, good services, and of course the competitive pricing which is there. So that's the way we look at brand preferences in the market.
Okay. Interesting. And yes, I mean, you do have a valid point that if you can actually command a price differential in the market and still maintain not only the numbers, but actually lead the others, then obviously you're doing possibly something better than what the others are doing. Now we have another 10 odd minutes to wrap up. So I'll come to the last part of our discussion, right? And I'll start with Utkarsh. So Utkarsh, this entire subject of unraveling the luxury vehicle potential for India. Hopefully those who are watching us, they've enjoyed what we've discussed, because to me, this is unraveling to a large extent. But as you move forward, for you as a luxury brand marketer, and for the entire luxury vehicle segment, if you were really to say maximize on the potential, which all of you have spoken of, right, as you move forward, and we would love to see a situation, where the segment, it finally goes ahead and crosses the 100,000 mark in a year and then keeps moving forward. Do you think it will happen through small incremental revision steps, or do you need some major disruption to happen in the way you guys are doing things, in the way this market actually operates?
See, I believe that this segment to really reach its maximum potential and to be at at a level that you're talking about. So that is something that can only happen over a period of time. It is not something that even if, like we discussed about, something that can be done by the policymaker or something, anything is done. I think it's impractical to say that unless and until some huge subsidy comes in, that is something which is that will disrupt the market at a larger extent, but that is something which is very impractical. But otherwise, I think this is something which only grows over a period of time, and slowly, steadily, as people gain confidence, the overall economy develops, people the network develops, everything is there. Like, it's a whole ecosystem, like the ecosystem needs to develop. So that is something which cannot happen overnight, which will ultimately happen, but happen over a period of time. So yes, we'll be seeing incremental growths, but it will not be something that we can expect that this thing, if done, it will give out huge results. It's not like that. So I think we just need to be patient for the overall market to be huge, and we just need to take productive and corrective and innovative steps in that direction, and slowly and steadily, I think that the potential will be reached.
Okay, slow and steady and patient, as you said. Amit, your view.
Absolutely, what Utkarsh is saying is absolutely correct. So it will take time to market to mature, and slowly and steadily we will reach there. That's the way. That's the way. But yes, definitely, as a dealer, I will again say, if I want to increase my sales, and if a brand has to increase the sales or on their numbers, they have to launch more and more exciting products, so that customer can buy more and more, and they can, if one buys, then their friends and families and their colleagues also get influenced to buy, to see that excited product, then they also convert, they're also getting converted. So that's what we can do in day-to-day life. But yes, what Utkarsh has said is absolutely correct. It will take time to mature, to market to mature. That's the way forward. That's what I can say.
Thanks. Santosh, your take on this?
So the way I see it also, I think EVs may provide a good inflection point, because if the duty structure remains the same, at least on EVs, I don't see the government doing sub 4 meter and plus 4 meter cess, etc. at this point of time. So at least if we will get a level playing field, then I think for all in the market, there can be an opportunity and an inflection point if the policy stability continues. But I think apart from that, I keep saying to my marketing team that our biggest competitor is not anyone in the traditional space, but it is the mutual fund industry. And I still feel that if you are able to find that guy who's spending 50,000 on a mutual fund every month SIP, and this guy somehow is getting convinced, I think all of us in this call will have an exponential growth. Surely it's a cultural topic, so you cannot expect this guy to now shift his savings to driving Mercedes-Benz cars. But we are working, and I think all of us, including our competitors, look into this. So more the products come in, more competition is aggressive. It's healthy for the overall market to grow. So we would always encourage more and more competition, because that drives the market more stronger, and maybe also can also help the market grow overall.
Very, very, very interesting point. And, it reminds me of a personal experience, when I had just started working, which was in 1991. So it tells you how old I am. right? So, I was a management executive. I had just joined Maruti Udyog. It was still Maruti Udyog then, and not Maruti Suzuki. And being a young guy, so I went up and I told my boss that, boss, I want challenges in life. So he said, fine. So I'll give you a wonderful challenge. You go ahead and you become part of a team that will sell the Maruti 1000. Okay. And this was 1991. And you must remember the Maruti 1000 was announced in 1990. And like all Maruti products, when it was announced, it got 250,000 bookings, right? And then after 2 months, Maruti announced the price. And 175,000 bookings were cancelled. Okay. It was the first time in the history of Maruti that they actually had what they called a failure, right? And I was given that as a challenge. And I was told that you will be part of a team which will have this focus over the next 6 months of promoting the Maruti 1000 and whatever it takes to sell it. And the team was made up of 3 people. I was the junior most. It was headed by the ex-General Secretary of the Maruti Udyog Workers Union. Okay, a man called Mr. K.K. Datta. Now he was, both a feared and a disliked person in the organization, especially when you're a union leader. But I had no other option because I had gone up and gallantly said I want a challenge. Okay, so I was part of the team and we were taking our first flight from Delhi to Mumbai to have a meeting with the dealers in Mumbai. And Datta Saab was reading Business India. And on the cover of Business India was a photograph of Dalal Street. Okay, it is actually the photograph of the parking lot of Dalal Street. Right? He saw it and then he held it up to me and said, and he told me, Avik ji, kuch dikh raha hai aapko? Which is, are you seeing something? And of course, I couldn't see anything. So I said, Datta sir, nahi dikh raha, kya bataiye? Which is, tell me. He said, isme kitne Maruti 1000 dikh rahe hain aapko? So I said, none. He said, यही हमारा टारगेट होना चाहिए 1 साल में यही फोटो छपनी चाहिए बिजनेस इंडिया के कवर पे और इस पार्किंग लॉट में हमें 50% मारुति 1000 दिखने चाहिए because these are the guys who have money, these are the guys who are making money on the stock market. Why are they not buying the Maruti 1000? And I was so amazed and I said, sir, आपने ये कैसे सोचा? So he said, छोटा दिमाग है, छोटी सोचता हूँ मैं बड़ा नहीं सोचता. Which is such a telling statement, which is, your customers lie in places where you least expect them. So as Santosh so interestingly said, look at those guys who are making those investments in the mutual funds. They have that amount of cash. They have that money. They have that liquidity. They must be surely wanting a far more elevated mobility experience in their lives. And that to me is a very, very important takeaway from all of you today, because, and to sum up, what we've discussed today, how to unravel the luxury vehicle potential. We will unravel it because all of you as a community, you have introspected hard over the last 12 to 14 months. Okay, and you realize that the experience to your customers has to be omni-channel. It's got to be immersive. Okay, there is this heightened use of digital, which is not only for reach, but also support, awareness, and making all of you closer to your customers. The EV momentum, you look at that actually as a point of inflection, which can actually lead to greater adoption of luxury badges, because suddenly you become more accessible to your target customers. Very interesting thing that Amit said. He said, you need to have more meaningful dialogues. Okay, because everything else is taken care of technology. The one thing that technology can't take care of is having meaningful dialogues and building enduring relationships. And that is what the industry and you as a segment have to keep doing, to keep increasing your tribe. You will have to look at people with fresh mindsets, which is what Santosh spoke about and Utkarsh spoke about. the new mindsets that are happening from B class, C class towns. And lastly, yeah, this is a marathon race for you guys. It has been a marathon race. It will continue to be a marathon race. It's got to be slow, steady, patient, but you've got to keep the steam. You've got to have the stamina to carry on. So gentlemen, thank you very much. I mean, I had a wonderful time, chatting up with all three of you. Amit, Utkarsh, Santosh, thank you very much for your time. I'm sure everybody really enjoyed.